The hall was dead silent. All eyes were on the stage. There, a single man stood alone. No camera flashes, no stage lights, just his bare feet. President Mark Atwood had taken off his shoes right there. On one of the most prestigious political stages in the country, Elena Cross stood across from him, the youngest female CEO in America. Time had called her the future of tech. She wore a sharp black suit, her hair pulled back tight, her eyes cold, her hand extended waiting for a handshake. But he didn't raise his hand, didn't nod, didn't move. He simply took off his shoes and placed them on the floor. Old shoes, worn leather, peeling soles. Elena froze. The cameras caught everything. The entire country was watching live. She had no idea what was happening. The audience whispered. No one dared speak. No one dared move. Then he spoke, low and steady. Every leader must choose the shoes they walk in. Elena said nothing. She didn't know how to respond. She had come here for a handshake, for a headline, to assert her power. She hadn't come to be humiliated or asked to remove her shoes. But he wasn't mocking her. He wasn't judging. He just looked at her differently, not as a rival, not as a politician, but as a person, as a father, as a man who had once served in a war, who had walked barefoot through mud. He continued, "My father was a shoemaker in Kansas. He used to say, 'You want to know who someone really is? Look at the shoes they wear and the feet they hide.'" Elena stood still. A memory flickered. She was 10. Her mother used to make her take off her shoes at the door. Every time she came home, every time she returned, it hit her, then vanished. He bent down, picked up another pair of shoes, even older, and placed them before her, then said, "If you want to understand me, put these on. Not because they fit, but because you're willing to step down." She looked around. The cameras were flashing non-stop. Her team stood frozen. No one gave a signal. No one dared intervene. There was no script for this moment. No PR strategy. Only a choice. Step up or step down. Be a leader or be a human being. Slowly, Elena knelt, removed her expensive high heels, silently, one at a time. No one spoke. She slid her feet into the old shoes. They were loose, odd, unfamiliar, but real. Her feet touched the floor. No more layers, no more rolls. The president smiled. For the first time that day, not because he'd won, not because he'd dominated, but because he'd been understood. He held out his hand. Only then she took it, a handshake, not for the cameras, not for a contract, but for connection. The entire room stood, no applause, just silence, as if they were waiting, as if they were learning. No one spoke. No one needed to, because they had just witnessed a lesson, not from a textbook, not on television, but right there, in silence and in a pair of old shoes. Elena left the hall in silence. No reporters followed, no advisors beside her, just her and the old shoes. Her feet ached slightly. The feeling was strange. No pride left, only truth. So real that when she stepped into the car, she couldn't bring herself to look in the mirror. For the first time in years, she wasn't sure who she was. The car rolled down Ventura Boulevard. Neon signs flickered outside. People laughed on the sidewalks like nothing had happened. They didn't know. Only the cameras knew. And so did she. She slipped off the old shoes, held them in her hands, looked closer. Cracked leather. Dry mud still stuck to the soles. One lace nearly torn off. She whispered, "He meant it." That wasn't a performance. The driver glanced at the rearview mirror. "Ma'am, where to now?" She paused. "A few seconds. Back to the hotel. Then no. Wait. Stop at Griffith Park." The driver blinked. "At this hour, it's late. Please stop the car." Her voice was soft but firm. He pulled over. She stepped out. Night air brushed her face. The wind tugged at her loose hair. She held the shoes close to her chest and walked slowly into the park. No one followed. No security, no cameras, just Elena Cross. And the uncertainty she had never known. She sat on a long wooden bench. In front of her, Los Angeles, glowing, rushing, and far away. Far from the moment she removed her heels. Far from the president's eyes. Far from herself. What will the headlines say tomorrow, she wondered. Elena humiliated on live TV. Elena breaks under pressure. Or maybe Elena learns to be real. She sighed, then checked her phone. Dozens of messages, hundreds of missed calls. From the media, the board, her mother. She didn't respond. Turned off the screen, slipped the phone into her bag. An old woman walked by, carrying a worn cloth tote. She paused, eyeing the shoes. "Those are nice shoes." The woman grinned, toothless. Elena blinked. I just borrowed them." The woman sat down beside her. "Borrowed or old, they still take you places. You're Elena Cross, right?" Elena's heart jumped. "You know me." The woman nodded. "Been watching the news all night. You're smart. But tonight, you grew up." Elena bit her lip, fought the tears. "I feel weak." "No," the woman said gently. "You just got stronger, because strength means letting go of ego. No one does that at your age." Elena turned to her, not with pride, but with gratitude. The kind of gratitude that needs no words. The wind picked up. The old woman stood. "Keep those shoes. Don't polish them. Don't lock them in a glass case. Let them stay dirty, because dirty is real." She turned and walked away. Elena stood still. Watching her disappear, she knew. Tonight changed everything, not just for the cameras, but for herself. The car returned to pick her up. She didn't say a word, just sat quietly. And for the first time, she didn't think about stock prices, or cash flow, or follower counts. She thought about her feet, and the road ahead, and how she should walk it. The next morning, Elena walked into Nexera headquarters. No red carpet, no media statement, no makeup crew. She wore a plain white shirt, no logo, no badge of power, and no high heels. She stepped into the main lobby. Employees glanced up. Some whispered. Some pretended not to notice. They didn't know how to react. Elena didn't look like yesterday. No spotlight, no shine, just a woman. Wearing old shoes, with quiet eyes, she entered the boardroom. The executive team was already waiting. Suspicious looks, rapid-fire voices. "What were you thinking last night? Do you know how much we lost? Stock dropped 2%. Elena didn't answer right away. She stood, didn't rush to sit, didn't apologize, didn't explain. She spoke softly. "We didn't lose anything. We only lost ego. And I was ready to give that up." One executive snapped. "You're the face of this company. If you falter, we collapse." Elena looked him in the eye. Strength doesn't mean pretending. And weakness isn't about bowing down. I didn't fail last night. I learned how to face myself. The room fell quiet. Someone asked gently, "So what now?" Elena walked to the whiteboard, wrote 3 words. Truth, touch, time. She turned around. "We've been selling products, but we're not touching people. We chase speed, but lose depth. We need to pause. We need to take off our shoes." Murmurs filled the room. Then the oldest board member spoke. "I used to think you were arrogant. Today I see You're brave. Elena bowed her head for the first time. In a boardroom meeting, not out of formality, but out of gratitude. After the meeting, Elena stepped out to the back courtyard. A young engineer rushed up. I watched the live stream last night. Thank you for giving us hope. Elena looked surprised. Hope for what? He smiled. That being real still has a place. That leaders can tremble and still be heard. Elena smiled. Not the kind meant for a camera, but a different kind. Human, honest, like she had just found herself again. After years, she returned to her office, took off the old shoes, set them on her desk, didn't wipe them clean, didn't lock them in a case, just left them there as a reminder, a symbol, not loud, just present. 3 days later, Elena received an invitation from a small university in Vermont. Their annual graduation ceremony. They asked her to be the keynote speaker. At first, she planned to decline. She'd grown used to speeches with scripts, with sound checks, with speechwriters. But this time, there was no script, no teleprompter, just a microphone, and 4,000 students waiting. That morning, she wore a white shirt, no tie, no designer labels, and still no high heels, just soft leather shoes, gifted by an old shoemaker in Brooklyn. Wear what makes you feel real. He'd told her that. The campus lawn was packed. The air was alive with joy. Parents held up cameras. Students wore bright caps and gowns. When her name was called, the crowd went quiet. Not out of fear, but curiosity. Elena stepped onto the wooden stage. She carried nothing in her hands, except for one small thing in her pocket, a pair of old, torn shoelaces. From the night at Reagan Hall, she took the mic, drew a deep breath, and began. My dear friends, I'm not here today to teach, because lately, I've been the student. I've learned how to take off my shoes. A few soft chuckles followed, not mocking, but the kind of laughter that comes when something hits home. She continued, I used to think leadership was about speaking well, making decisions, controlling the room. But I've learned leadership is also about silence, about listening, about stepping back. The crowd grew still. No one scrolled, no one left. She told them about that night in Griffith Park, and the old woman she met, and her words, dirty is real. Elena held up the shoelaces. This is the most valuable gift I've ever received. Not a billion-dollar contract, not a tech award, but these torn shoelaces, because they remind me truth doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be brave. Applause echoed across the lawn. Not wild, not dramatic, but genuine. She closed with this, one day you'll lead, maybe in a company, maybe in a family, maybe in a tiny kitchen. But please remember, sometimes the most important thing isn't stepping up. It's daring to step down. Her speech lasted just 7 minutes. But afterward, social media lit up. Step down to rise. Leadership without shoes. No marketing team behind it. No media campaign. Just one truth, spoken from the heart. That night, she sat alone, turned off her phone. Beside her was a box of letters, real ones, for the first time in years. She opened them. One letter from a high school student read, You made me believe successful people can still listen. A nurse wrote, Thank you for reminding me I'm not invisible. A single father wrote, For the first time, my daughter asked, Daddy, does taking off your shoes mean being brave? Elena folded the letters, leaned back in her chair, not tired, not drained, just full. Knee week after the Vermont graduation, Elena received an unusual envelope. No logo, no return address, just a single handwritten line. There's still one thing left undone. Below it, 3 simple strokes, M. Atwood. She opened the envelope. Inside was a plain card. No colors, no fancy print, just a time, a location, and 4 handwritten words, no shoes required. She exhaled. No smile, no surprise. Just understanding. She knew this wasn't over. Something greater was waiting. That morning, a black armored car pulled up to her door. No reporters, no noise, just a quiet security officer. Ms. Cross, if you would. She nodded. Stepped inside. No luggage, no papers. Still wearing those old shoes. Still unpolished. The car took the back entrance of the White House. No red carpet, no flags, no formalities. Just him waiting by the summer rose garden. President Mark Atwood. No blazer, no tie, no shoes. Elena approached. No handshake, no bow. Just a smile. I'm here. He nodded. Thanks for not wearing heels. They sat down on a wooden bench in the shade. No security, no cameras, no one else. Then he spoke. Last time I showed you the shoes. This time I want to ask you to walk with me. Elena tilted her head. Walk where? He pulled out a folded sketch, not a map of the country, but a blueprint of a building, a new center, named the Ground Leadership Center. I want to build this with you. Not a place for politicians, not a stage for celebrities, just a place to slow down, a place where leaders learn to take off their shoes before stepping on stage, before walking into a boardroom, before entering someone's heart. Elena stared at the sketch. No red carpet, no long tables, just rows of plain benches, and a line of water basins at the entrance. A ritual. Not mandatory, but understood. Everyone who entered would walk in barefoot. Do you think people will laugh at us? She asked. He smiled softly. Oh, some definitely will, but some won't. Some will cry, because finally they're being seen, not as votes, but as people. Elena took a deep breath. She had once built an empire, raised billions in funding, led the tech industry, but never had she felt this nervous. I'm in, but on one condition. He nodded. Name it. No nameplates, no private chairs, no stage. We sit side by side, on bare wood, bare feet, empty hands. Only one thing allowed a real heart. The president stood, held out his hand, not like a formality, but like an honest invitation. She took it, not out of duty, but out of faith. Opening day, no rain, no harsh sun, just a soft breeze and a strange silence. The Ground Leadership Center stood quietly built deep in the woods of suburban Virginia, not far from D.C., but far enough from the noise. No banners, no live streams, no ribbon-cutting speeches. Only 2 people stepped forward, Elena and President Atwood, both barefoot, walking slowly across a stone path. Not a word exchanged. The doors opened wide. Inside, no desks, no screens, no podium, just a row of water basins and 10 round wooden chairs. No name tags, no hierarchy. Outside the gates, the press gathered. Some scoffed. What is this place? Barefoot leadership. They've clearly run out of ideas. A few networks refused to broadcast it live. They called it uninteresting. No celebrities, no billionaires, just strangeness. Inside, people began to arrive. A retired school teacher, a city bus driver, a senior psych major, a war veteran with one leg from Afghanistan, a single mother of 2. Each removed their shoes, sat in the circle. No one asked names. No one asked jobs. The president sat quietly. Elena looked at each face. She spoke. No one here is here to teach. We're here to listen. Not with our ears, but with our bare feet and the stories we carry. A young man hesitated, then said, "I've never sat this close to a president." Atwood smiled. "We're on the same ground. That's close enough." A woman choked up. "I used to feel unworthy to speak." "Elena, you made me reconsider." The conversation lasted 3 hours. No script. No one left. No one filmed. When it ended, they stepped back outside, quietly. But their eyes had changed, as if they'd left a layer behind and reclaimed something human. The rest of the country didn't know much. There was no stream, just a few blurry photos snapped through a local reporter's lens. But then, something no one expected happened. That afternoon, a black SUV pulled up to the gate. The driver stepped out, opened the back door, and out stepped Claire Whitmore, the veteran senator. The one who had fiercely debated Elena, who'd criticized President Atwood on national television. Known for her signature red heels, she stepped out barefoot. No words. She quietly removed her shoes, stepped through the row of basins, and took a seat in the wooden circle. The press outside froze. One reporter whispered, "She really went in." Another asked, "Is this some kind of stunt?" No one had the answer. Inside, Elena looked at her, not surprised, just nodded. "Thank you for coming." Senator Whitmore replied, "I didn't come for you. I came for me. I'm tired of always needing to be right. I just want to listen and to be human." The circle sat in silence, not out of power, but out of courage, the courage to step in. Without shoes, without titles, without fear. One early autumn afternoon, Elena was watering plants in her backyard. No interviews, no meetings, just soil, and the scent of dry leaves. The doorbell rang. She opened it. A courier handed her an envelope, stamped with the United Nations seal. Inside was an invitation, Global Leadership Forum. This year's theme, Redefining Power. We invite Ms. Elena Cross to present on the ground leadership model. She sat down, not out of fear, but out of memory. She remembered the laughter from the media, the mocking online comments. She thinks she's some barefoot saint. What can walking barefoot fix, anyway? She remembered those who cried, who sent thank you letters, who said, "You gave me the courage to take off my mask." Elena picked up the phone, dialed New York directly. A female assistant answered, "We would love your confirmation. You may be our keynote speaker. The Prime Minister of the UK, the President of Brazil, and the IMF chair will also attend." Elena asked, "What's the dress code?" "Oh, formal," she replied. "Evening gown, heels, grand stage. Elena Cross will be the highlight." Elena paused, then said, "I need time to think." 3 days later, Elena boarded a plane. No first-class ticket, no assistant by her side, just a small backpack and a pair of old shoes passed down by a soldier's father. She arrived in Geneva, a city of lights, 5-star hotel, red carpets rolled out. Her name printed on banners, Elena Cross, the voice of ground power. She looked at the sign, then pulled out a small piece of paper. With a pencil, she wrote, "Apprentice of Truth," and taped it over her official name. On the day of the forum, the auditorium was packed. Thousands in attendance. Live across 60 countries. Spotlights blazed. Cameras swept the crowd. The host announced Elena Cross, leader of a new wave. She stepped out, slowly. No gown, no glitter, just a plain cotton shirt, jeans, and cracked leather shoes. The audience murmured, Some frowned. Some exchanged glances. Some smirked. She stood at the center, took the microphone. No slides, no polished speech. She began with a line that made the whole room hold its breath. This is the only speech I hope you'll forget, because what I want to leave behind isn't in my words. It's in what I carry with me. She sat down on the stage floor, removed her shoes, then her socks, placed her bare feet on the wood, silently. No music, no effects. After a pause, she continued, "Leadership isn't about standing tall. It's about daring to stand equal. We've confused applause with value. We've mistaken spotlight for conscience." No one interrupted. No one left. She told the story of Griffith Park, of the water basins, of the wooden circle, of the senator who once hated her but took off her shoes to listen. She closed with this: if you hold power, remember power might be the shoe, but trust is the foot, and not every step requires walking. The entire hall rose. No shouting, no cheering, just standing and clapping, slowly, rhythmically, one beat at a time. Elena stepped down, put on her old shoes, didn't switch personas, didn't rebrand her image. She only changed herself. As Elena landed in New York, an assistant rushed over, her face tight with tension. "You need to see this." She handed her the phone. On the screen, shareholders demand CEO resignation after strange Geneva speech. Elena read silently. No expression, no questions, no surprise. She just nodded. "Thank you. You can head home early." That afternoon, the boardroom was packed. Every shareholder was present. Folders lined the table. Whispers floated through the air. In front of them sat the chairman's seat. The seat Elena had occupied for 6 years. A silver-haired man stood. "We respect you," he began. "But the market doesn't run on feelings. Investors want stable leadership, not someone who goes barefoot on a world stage." Another voice followed. "Clients are unsettled. They want a CEO, not a philosopher. You were a symbol, but now things have changed." Elena stood, slowly, her hand resting on the wooden table. She didn't defend, didn't deflect. She said, "I used to think leadership was about protecting the brand, maintaining the image, securing market trust. But I was wrong. Keeping a seat means nothing if you've lost your heart. A brand isn't a logo. It's how we treat people. It's the truth we're willing to stand for." The room went still. She continued, "Today, I'm not asking to stay. I'm offering to step down. Not because I failed, but because I found something greater than success." A female board member whispered through tears, "Are you sure you built this empire?" Elena smiled. "I built it so someone else could walk forward, and I'll step away. Not to disappear, but to move closer to what's real." She removed the name badge from her chest, set it gently on the table, and walked out. Not in a rush, not looking back. In the lobby, staff gathered. Someone asked quietly, "You're really leaving?" Elena nodded. "Yes, but I'm not walking away. I'm just walking in the right direction." That evening, she sat by her window, watching the city light up. A message came through from President Atwood, just one line: "Now we truly begin." She smiled, not because of the message, but because she knew from here on out there was nothing left to lose, only something left to give: truth and trust. 1 year after her resignation, the Ground Leadership Center had grown. 7 new branches opened, from Colorado to South Dakota, from Georgia to Maine. No flash, no billboards, just a small wooden sign etched with, "Please remove your shoes and your mask." Elena no longer had an office. She moved into a small cabin, In the northern pine woods, she grew vegetables, watered her garden. Sometimes she got handwritten letters. Sometimes she visited the center. That day was a quiet celebration. Not for her, but for the center's one-year anniversary. She arrived without notice. No press, no speeches, just her. The same old leather shoes, and a folded note in her pocket. The door opened. Inside that familiar circle, plain wooden chairs, a water basin at the center. But today, the person in the middle wasn't her. A young woman was speaking, her voice trembling, but clear. I used to be shy. I thought I was too small to matter. But then, I took off my shoes. And for the first time, I was truly heard. A man beside her added, "I used to manage a warehouse. I only knew how to yell into a headset. But my first time here, I learned how to listen without interrupting." A college student stood. "Here, I'm not afraid to be wrong. No one tries to teach me. They just sit with me." Elena sat at the edge of the circle. No one noticed her at first. No name tag, no introduction. Just another listener. The young woman glanced over, suddenly froze. The room went still. She asked, "Are you Elena Cross?" Elena smiled. "Just someone who once got lost and found her way by taking off her shoes." The room laughed, not out of surprise, but out of closeness. Someone motioned to her. "Want to join us?" She nodded, removed her shoes, stepped barefoot onto the wooden floor. Not as a teacher, not as a leader, just as someone walking the same path. A little girl, maybe 10, walked up shyly. She handed Elena a folded note. "Elena, I wrote this for you." She opened it. Neat handwriting. "Thank you for not being afraid to walk slow." Elena folded the note, held it in her palm, then looked around the circle. Faces of every color, every background. No one the same, yet all sitting equal. After a moment, she said, "I used to think leadership meant making people follow. Now I know leadership is sitting down, sitting until someone else has the courage to rise." No one said a word, because no words were needed. Evening came. Sunlight streamed through the wooden door. A cool breeze drifted in. She looked outside. Children were running barefoot on the grass, laughing. No titles, no reasons. And she thought to herself, "I gave up an empire. I lost power, but I gained something greater, something I had feared I might never touch, something I now hold without fear. What it means to be truly human."